didn't. You know why? A lot of y'all probably don't even know why. But I was signed to Bob Arum. I wasn't my own boss. I was given a guarantee on every single fight that I fought for Bob Arum in Top Rank. That's the difference. That's the difference, you guys. So if you guys can't understand that, then I don't know what to tell you.
We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Just know, Ego gonna make you put respect on my name. Regis Prograis does a brand new interview with Fight Hub TV, and he talks about Crawford versus Canelo. In this video, I'm gonna break down what he had to say. Now, make sure you guys check out the interview. You can hear it for yourself. I'm gonna paraphrase, but basically Regis Prograis, he started off almost like a disclaimer, and some people feel the need to do that when they say something critical. The reason some people don't like my commentary is I seldom do that. I just say what I feel, say what I mean, and it's out there. It's in the atmosphere. Deal with it. I don't care if you like it. I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear. But either way, Regis Prograis, in this interview, he was asked about Canelo, Crawford at 168, to which Regis Prograis starts off with all praises. He says, I know Crawford, we're cool. We don't have no issues. He says Crawford is one of the best of this generation. And he says you have to list Crawford as an all-time great. And he believes he deserves historic placement. But he doesn't believe that Crawford should fight 168 Canelo. He says Canelo is not just a big puncher, he can also box. So he says, despite my love and adoration for Crawford and his skill and ability, after seeing his last fight at 154 with Israel Madrimov, he says, I just don't see him doing anything with Canelo at 168 at all. He said, I just can't see it. And you can see his face because it's being recorded on video. He looks like he means that. Like he can't fathom Crawford being successful under those circumstances. Who else said that in the world of boxing? Oh yeah, me. That's who. I love it. The great thing about my job is I get to speak my mind, and at the end of the day, you guys, the fans who listen to the content and come back video after video, you can hold me to my words. Notice the things that I say on my channel, they usually stick, and I'm usually on the right side of history. I'm human, I make mistakes, of course, but more often than not, the accuracy is stupid. And here's the thing, I don't wait for anybody. I beat to the sound of my own drum, so I don't wait until something becomes popular. That's what a lot of people in this content creation space in the boxing niche like to do. They'll wait until an outcome of a fight and say, oh, I told you guys. I never do that. I say it before it happens, so then I could be given the credit if I was right. But live by the sword, die by the sword. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and I gotta eat that too, right? Because I'm a man. And everything I said about Crawford versus Canelo, now you're starting to hear more and more people suggest what I've been telling you. And here's the funny thing about it. The videos are still up. I leave breadcrumbs. It's like Hansel and Gretel. I always know where I came from in this content creation space. All of my body of work is online. So I can't control. People can rip the videos, download it, whatever. So if it's on the internet, it's pretty much forever. And on top of that, I don't delete no videos. So it is what it is, right? And that's what it is with Crawford Canelo. I didn't wait for even Crawford to fight Madrimov before I started saying I don't want to see Crawford versus Canelo. Again, Crawford thinks he has seen something in Canelo's game that he can expose and he can win. Some people suggest that Crawford just wants the large payday. He's looking for retirement. He's going to go give it his all, but he doesn't ultimately care. You know, win, lose, or draw, he's going to hold himself to the best standard he can. And if he wins, he wins. And he wants that added to his resume. If not, then, you know, at least he still made a lot of money. I told you from the beginning, this fight is stupid. It makes 0 sense at 168. The only upside is, I guess, for the people who are just curious. That's it. Just like a curiosity thing. But here's the thing, and some people aren't going to like this. Terence Crawford is 37 years old. He's on the back half of 30. He's pushing 40. If he were to be a pay-per-view star, I feel like that moment probably would have come earlier in his career, but bad business Bud, because of some of the decisions and how he's moved and sticking around top rank so long, not getting the marquee fights, not getting the Pacquiao fights, not getting guys like Keith Thurman when Keith Thurman had 2 belts, it has stagnated his career, and now he's trying to right his wrongs all at once in a short period of time. And he's teamed up with Turkey, and he thinks he can do that now. Like, oh, I got someone who's going to put a bunch of money. But the downside to that is this. Bob Arum just spilled the beans and said that Turkey, people above him, are trying to calm down the moves that are being made, probably because they're losing money. If I told you, in a business, if something is working, why would you just stop doing it? Right? Like if you had a bakery and you're selling this one apple fritter donut and you're making $1 million a day selling mostly the apple fritter, then why would you stop selling the apple fritter? It just doesn't make sense, right? So Crawford Madrimov, I try to tell y'all, the Bud Buddies didn't want to believe it, but it flopped. The reports suggested it lost over $10 million. Then they did the UFC Sphere. It flopped in terms of how much money it took for the production versus what they got. I truly believe these fights flopped. Now Bob Arum is telling you that Riyadh season, they're trying to scale it back and only have fights during Riyadh season, which is basically roughly October through February. So I just don't see the Canelo fight happening like that. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't see it, because if they're bringing the fights to the point where it happens in Riyadh season, Canelo doesn't even fight in February, right? He usually fights the Mexican dates, May and September. So you would probably have to offer Canelo some astronomical amount of money to move from May and then be ready by February to fight Crawford, a guy he said he won't get credit for beating. I just don't see that happening at all. But like I said, prove me wrong. If what I'm saying is not valid, prove me wrong. Make the fight and we'll see. But ultimately, I don't want to see the fight. What Regis Prograis is saying is what I've been telling you. Really makes no sense. And here's the thing. Another reason why the fight is horrible is because Crawford is really the only one calling for it, and the Bud Buddies. A couple of Bud Buddies and content creators are saying, oh, we want this fight. Canelo's ducking. The rest of the world doesn't really care. Crawford is not a big draw, so it's not, in my opinion, it's not going to have the same level of interest. You think it does, but the bulk of the interest will come from the bigger star. Canelo can fight Berlangas and Munguia, and clearly he can, attract the crowd even with fights that people didn't ask for. So yeah, it would do relatively well, I guess, based on, Canelo's ability to draw mostly and maybe some curiosity, but it's just a fight that doesn't really make sense in my honest worldview. You haven't cleaned house at 154. You've never had a fight at 160, and you haven't done a fight at 168. So what gives you the right to move up 14 pounds? We've already seen Jermell Charlo, who was undisputed at 154, and he had no success with Canelo. And he's a great fighter too. Now you can say, oh, but Crawford, he does this better. He's more skilled. Yeah, but who has a better chin? To me, Jermell Charlo, I would say his chin ranks higher than Crawford's chin, you know, especially a guy coming up from 135. And Canelo can punch, right? So again, this is just a meaningless fight. I don't even understand why people are even entertaining it. It's stupid. Like, I don't get it. I think Crawford, there's so many good fights for him that make a bit more sense than him moving out of the division, cutting in line from the Morrells and guys like Benavidez and William Skull and all these other guys, Billy. They all want to fight Canelo too. So all these guys have been campaigning for Canelo. They don't get it. But Crawford doesn't have to do anything at 160 or 68 and barely do anything at 54. He has one fight against a guy with 11 fights, and he gets a Canelo fight. That's not what boxing is, in my opinion. So every time Terence Crawford is like begging for this fight with Canelo, he's really saying, trust me, bro. Like somebody saying, oh, I got $1 million. Okay, show me. Let me see your bank statement. No, trust me, bro. That's what Crawford is saying. No one's doubting that he's a great fighter, but you're a great fighter in the divisions that you fought at. Means jack at 160, 168, and it's still yet to be determined at 154. Like, you haven't fought Castano, Fundura, and Murtazaev and all these other top guys at 154. So we don't know how good you can even be in this division. And the Madrimov fight was, if anything, because you had been calling out Canelo, I feel like that was your audition tape. And being honest, Crawford did his thing, but not so much to the point where if you fought a guy with 11 pro fights. I don't care about no amateur fights and all that. As a pro, he had 11 fights, 10 wins, right? And he has a draw on his record, right? And the way that fight was set up and how competitive it was, if that was your audition tape for Canelo, 14 pounds higher than that, you blew it. You blew it. You would have to look far more impressive and have that fight against an 11 fight guy that nobody knew outside of hardcores, look far more impressive and one-sided and or get a stoppage or something to really make that mark. Just think of cartoons, for example. I grew up on Ninja Turtles. If the Ninja Turtles barely get by the Foot Clan, what makes you think that they can defeat Bebop and Rocksteady or Shredder or Krang? Like, those are the head bosses. Canelo is like the head henchman. He's not the Foot Clan. So I feel like you would have to destroy the Foot Clan to make the public believe that you can easily beat Bebop and Rocksteady or Shredder or Super Shredder or Krang. Shredder, we must get to the technical. Shredder! But the turtles must be stopped for the Forsaken. You don't get Krang unless you defeat the Foot Clan impressively. That's how boxing should be. If you still got more work to do, beat Jerron Boots Ennis by stoppage. And then maybe people are like, wow, beat Murtazaev, beat Virgil Ortiz by stoppage. You know, these would be great calling cards or great audition tapes to show that, like, man, nobody can touch Crawford at 154. Crawford wants the Mario Brothers 3 warp whistle, and it looks like he just wants to advance to the Canelo fight, and he's just on some, trust me, bro, I could beat him. And that's just not good enough. Yes, we respect what you've done. You have skills, you're ambidextrous, you train hard, you're in shape, you beat Errol, right? You're 2 division champion that had undisputed belts. We get it. But just to be frank, your undisputed run was not as challenging per who you fought as a guy like Alexander Usyk. Usyk went from cruiserweight and was in the World Boxing Super Series tournament and then beat Tony Bellew by stoppage, then moved up to a heavyweight division where he's consistently outweighed by guys who are 6'6", 6'4", you know, big punchers. You've seen what Dubois did to Anthony Joshua. So Usyk, to be honest, he's that dude. I think Usyk has to be higher on the pound for pound, because if they both have the 2x undisputed in common, you got to look at the path to get there. Beating Ndongo is not as good as what Usyk did in the World Boxing Super Series, and then went on to knock out Tony Bellew, who had just knocked out David Haye twice. You dig? So again, that's not a slight to Crawford. These are facts. This is about facts over feelings. Y'all don't want to deal with the fact. So miss me with the Crawford and Canelo fight. If you really want to impress me, beat one of the guys that I said, or actually multiple ones of the guys that I said, the Murtazalevs, the Jaron Boots Ennis's, the Virgil Ortiz, by stoppage or something like that at 54, and then maybe you can get the demand up. But just fighting one time a year and then going the distance with an 11 fight guy, that's not enough. So what Regis Prograis is saying is what I've been saying. It's not convincing enough. Again, it's not saying you're a bad fighter. It's just saying that you haven't created a demand for such a fight when it looks like you have tall orders in your own division that you just got to 154. Somebody make that make sense. I'm gonna give you guys this one last analogy. If you have an 8th grader and then they move up to the 9th grade and not necessarily struggling, but kind of the work is challenging, it's keeping them busy. They're not getting straight A's. They're having to study for a reasonable amount of time. Then why do you think that it would be wise to give them a 12th grader senior curriculum or move them to college? The only way you get to be 16 and then you graduate and then go to Harvard is when you're a genius and the work is far too easy and beneath you, to the point where it's like, we got to challenge them. We got to give them, they're getting A's and valedictorians and stuff like that. And from what I seen in the Madrimov fight, it wasn't the type of fight where you just blew him out of the water and then you look like the prodigal son and a genius and he looked like he didn't belong in the ring with you. So I think at best, if that was your audition tape, it had to be stronger to get Canelo so many divisions above you. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to be believable. He had all knockouts at welterweight. So possibly, because you have to look at auras and perception, if he got another knockout versus Madrimov, then you'd be like, man, this boy's bad. He just keep knocking out everybody, moved up in weight, got the knockout. But to me, if anything, the Madrimov fight kind of hurt the Canelo fight because it made people pump their brakes where they maybe thought the Crawford Canelo would be a good idea. Then it now, based on how Madrimov did well with feinting, Canelo got some of the best feints in boxing. Book it. You can say whatever you want. Canelo need to fight Benavidez, all that. Cool. He still got some of the best feints in boxing. Madrimov's feints were throwing Crawford off, right? Period. So I need to see more at 54 before I start thinking about 60 and 68. And that's true boxing. We unpack.